know that we're listening.
Exactly.
That's the problem. They don't. Katya is an artist, and so she's going to bring a lot of artistic art. What do you call it? Things to make art. Yeah, things to make art with.
Artistic
materials.
Art supplies.
Yeah. And one of the ways that they can participate is to sit down around the session and draw out what they're hearing, that's going on, and then at the end they can have the last word, to present what they heard and show what it is they heard during the session.
We're going to need a strong moderator there. Somebody that, can, because the children are all going to want to, have the last word.
Oh no, I was thinking of I meant the children, as the children will have the last.
There's this thing many children, the little emperor syndrome, if you've heard of that in China. The one single boy who's raised and believes he's the center of the universe because, his parents treat him that way. And then all of a sudden, he gets in school and learns he's not. And so we have to balance when we bring up the children. Yes, you are, the most amazing, beautiful, wonderful, perfect being. And there are millions of us and billions of us. And so finding the balance of catering to them, but also we're living, we're doing this.
Well, there's a point, a very important point in a child's life that goes from being the center of the attention to realize that he's moving away, but that bridging is fundamental for so when he grows up, he can offer that attention.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So, which is the difference between being a child and being a mature person. The problem, there's no problem as far as whole societies have that process. The problem is some societies, as you make the bridge, you forget the child behind. And I think that's part of
what's happened.
That's what's happened with our society, that the adult's not supposed to act like a child. You left that behind. Right? And part of the new paradigm is to rescue the child in us so we can carry that child. The only difference is to know when to be the child and when to be the adult.
Well said.
Very well said, thank you.
And so that's
events that, something like We Are the World or something like that might be an icebreaker, a tension breaker, a dullness breaker.
Right, good. Like a sing-along.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I don't do many sing-alongs, but We Are the World, kind of like. People.
About the good things about the Costa Ricans. Like a little bit of, some of the things that they relate to, like being taught in school to wash their teeth after every meal, and to say thank you, and to say greet, very simple things which are very much part of the Tico education, right? And to see how they start to fit in. Something very simple. Because if they find it is too complicated, then they shy away.
Right. So, looking at the schedule, masana, boil the taro root, and then they mash it 3 days, let it ferment, stirring it 2 times a day, and it becomes this probiotic, enzyme-rich, really almost a superfood, you could say. It allowed the Polynesians to sail the Pacific and colonize Hawaii and who knows what else.
And here too.
Yeah.
They came here.
Yeah.
Actually, that's part of the spheres of the Dikis related to that.
So they're not building the giant dam, is that correct? Because it's...
Yes, they are not
building the spheres.
The whole thing collapsed. It's been a success, really a tremendous victory, tremendous. And it sets a precedent in Costa Rica that the people still have the power.
Yes.
Because it was a whole popular movement that stopped the big corporations from
Huge
establishing
multinational.
not only at the big dam, there were 2 big dams proposed, and then a series of small dams all along the Talamanca range.
And they were all
It's still not completely finished, but it looks like a lot of the big shots that bought land, thinking of these, critical spots, they're selling it.
oh really?
Yeah, that's just pretty much where the story's at.
Really wonderful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's really a tremendous victory.
Yeah, Costa Ricans are very surprising this way. When you cross the line with them,
Yeah.
they will take action.
Yeah. Costa Ricans are very peaceful, but every time they reach the limit, they take action, and they take action, massively. Let me just tell you, can I tell a little story about this? Yeah. I invaded Costa Rica back in '78. The whole army, Nicaraguan army, that was when Somoza, before the Sandinista movement. And I was in some French house in San Jose, and then the president came on radio and television, and he said, okay, my fellow Costa Ricans, clean up your weapons. Tomorrow, the nation is calling, because it's right to bear arms. Costa Ricans do have that constitutional right. So clean up your weapons, and we'll meet at the regular schedule, which is normally the schools, and there'll be trucks and buses to take you. Within 24 hours, about 1 million people, armed people, were moved to the border.
Wow.
Within 24 hours. Yeah.
Impressive. And everybody no big thing. Get out the guns, clean them up, the women in the kitchen preparing food, so the husbands and the children, some women also went.
Guns and fireworks.
Right. It was like,
Make it a party.
right.
Make it a party, yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting. There were several shots fired. One bullet ricocheted and hit a school teacher. And that became an issue in the United Nations. That how, a country without an army, our teachers are getting injured because some stupid army, doesn't know how to behave themselves. Yeah, so it was very, very emotional, very interesting. And Costa Ricans have that power. Not having an army is a big issue, and not having a strong police force is not. Now they have a lot stronger than
The last
before.
couple of years.
That was a few years ago, but still, like it's happened. For example, yesterday, I don't know how many of you knew about the news of the Limon, the syndicates declare what do you call it when people you don't go to work?
A strike.
A strike.
Syndicates
A huelga.
are
The unions.
unions, yeah.
Yeah, the unions, and it meant a big financial burden to the nation. Because the country has to pay, for these boats to, get on with the program. If the program is not working, then they have to pay. So they took first the police force and put them all to work on the docks. And that gave enough time to import, within 24 hours, import a bunch of specialists from other countries, and now the docks are being worked by professionals from other countries. So now the problem, I'm always, not always, but I'm primarily in favor of the syndicates, in favor of the unions. But sometimes the unions do not see the big picture. And there were, in this situation, nobody had the big picture. You had to do with this big multinational from Holland taking control of this new development in the docks. And, the syndicates, they didn't go for it. So the final word, guess who had the final word in straightening this whole thing up? The ecological movement. The ecologists of Costa Rica this morning said they don't have the paper, the proper study, impact studies done, therefore it's over. So now it's not over. And ended up to the final decision by the analysts. Isn't that nice?
Very nice.
Huh? social geography, meaning that even before the coming of the Europeans, Costa Rica was a receptor for political refugees from the Aztecs, the Incas. It was an economic refugee from the droughts of the period of 800 to 900. There was a El Nino effect, and it created economic chaos in Peru and in Mexico. So it was a recipient for. So what's happening now, it has happened before. So what has happened, what has turned out to be through the history, is that Costa Rica is a genetic bank of people looking for a better life, especially getting away from the persecutions of the empire, meaning the empire, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans. So they were looking for a place to get away. And who were those people getting away? The same people as always. Artists, political idealists, and so forth, that didn't want to live under the repression of the empire. So that's to look at Costa Rica as a genetic bank of ideas, and also the people that brought that concept here. That's what made Costa Rica, even before the coming of the Europeans. So that was already established. And the Europeans coming, it was the same story. It was, political refugees and, ideologists and, that came here looking for a better life. Yeah, so are we. Some points so we have a common ground in understanding what's going down. Okay, first of all, sustainability is basically a relationship between nature and society. That's why sustainability exists. So we're talking about what kind of pressure we're putting in nature, what kind of load capacity. Our bioregion, this is a very important term to understand sustainability. Bioregion, there's no such a thing as a sustainable farm. There's no such a thing as a sustainable community. Sustainability is a bioregional, that's the smallest concept to understand sustainability is a bioregional thing. So we're talking about social geography. Okay, that's very important. So basically, to understand sustainability, we have to have a global view. It's about the planet. So whatever is going on in the planet, we are part of it, even in our bioregion. Also, our footprint. So the relationship between the load capacity of our bioregion and the footprint, the ecological footprint that we're creating, that relationship is what sustainability is about. Sustainability has 4 basic pillars that sustain the concept. The main reason there is sustainability is because of the environment. So the environment is fundamental. Without that, there would not be sustainability. Why? Because sustainability has the purpose future generations can have a place on this planet and survive. Okay? That's why there is such a thing as sustainability. To guarantee that future generations have access to their needs. So environmental sustainability is the main thing. The second is economics. And a lot of people come into conflict with that because economics are fundamental. Now, could it be circle give, it could be barter and trade, it could be some type of currency, it doesn't matter. But economics are important. Without economics, we're not going anywhere. Economics is basically, by definition, is the ability to save, to be frugal, and to minimize waste, which is completely the opposite of what economics is being presented in our culture. So let's just clarify that point of economic. The third one is cultural. The third pillar of sustainability is cultural, which means what we're doing now. And to be able to share that and put that into perspective. There's 2 types of cultural sustainability. One is the traditional cultures which haven't fall prey to corporate cultures, okay? And the other one is the culture that we're creating by actually being part of a sustainable culture. That's what we're doing now again. All right? You following me? And the third one, the outcome of this would be social sustainability. In other words, we cannot pretend to have a social stability if we don't have a relationship, a sustainable relationship with our environment, with our knowledge of what that environment relationship means, and our economics. So they're all working together. Without those working together. So basically what I'm going to do now, I'm going to sit down and I start with a question. What do you think sustainability is about? Let's just start with that. Somebody just answer that or put that into perspective. I want to get that ball rolling on what is sustainability. Okay?
Sustainability is providing for the needs of present people without compromising the needs of future generations.
That's correct. That is the official definition of sustainability. So we stand that, okay? Anybody wants to add something to that?
I want to add that sustainable is also just maintaining. It's not like it's not creating abundance. It's just maintaining like a sustained space. So
Okay.
I like to propose a new word, thrivability. Thrivability.
Thrivability.
Which would be creating optimal health and abundance for not just humans, but for the whole web of life.
Okay, good. There's a very important attachment to sustainability and it's regeneration.
Yeah,
Okay, that's the word that would link to that. Sustainability in itself doesn't really mean much, like you said, without. Now, we have, and that's an important thing to understand about sustainability, is we do have an ecological debt to pay. And that's going to take generations. Now, to understand our position in history, the crossroads from history, we have to, it's unavoidable that we become victims of circumstances. In other words, all our ideals practically are worthless now because we are in a state of chaos. We are in a state of relativity between the forces that brought us to the situation and whatever we're going to do with it. So the only value we have as far as projecting that new paradigm is about starting to live the changes that we want to make. Okay? So, okay, good. Let's continue with another question. Is what do you think is the practical aspects of the economics and sustainability? Or an economic sustainability?
Practical aspect?
Practical. Everything is about practicality. It's not about idealism. We have to bring ourselves down to earth and come down from the clouds.
Let's say one practical aspect of that is if we don't explore and model ways that people can provide for themselves and people around them high quality livelihoods, they'll do so in ways that maximize their own personal benefit, which I think is collectively what we see as a society, is a large group of people who are individually trying to serve their own needs best.
I have, before I came here, I was in a study group on voluntary simplicity that said before all this corporate culture took over, that the indigenous, the traditional cultures, and also the chimpanzees before them and after, whatever, were able to take care of food, shelter, and clothing with less than 20 hours of effort a week. And I've lived this way. I lived this way in Costa Rica for 3 or 4 years, basically on $100 a month. And I lived this way going to the university. It was very empowering because when you're in your heart completely doing what you're called to be doing, you don't need all the rest of that shit that everybody keeps feeding. So that's how it just seems to me is that it's very, very easy to live on much, much, much less.
Frugality, by the way. The word is frugality.
And that reminds me, I was, where I live, they've only had electricity for 20 years. And I was talking to one of my neighbors, and I said, do you remember what life was like before electricity? He goes, oh yeah. He's like, that's when we lived in abundance. Like, we had everything we needed. And I was like, and now? He's like, well, now we're always in debt, and we have to cash crops, and we're always struggling, and now we're poor. And I was like, well, what do you do about that? And he's like, well, you can't go back, because once you see this stuff, you want it. Like, now I want this car, now I want this technology, and they're like, they don't see now another option. They think that the past was like this nostalgic place, but the future, it's hard. And even as a mother with children, like how to keep the kids from like craving all the stuff that Release like that we're creating is practically it takes a discipline. You know?
Okay, we have a good model right here in Costa Rica. Yes, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I was going to say the word that comes to mind for me is social capital. Okay, and what this means is that to be more sustainable, we need to shift from a corporate capitalist model into a more social capitalist model. And it's kind of a new term, too. What it means, though, is that whether you're in the city or on a farm, out in the woods, you're investing more time, effort, energy, money, resources into social spaces, being social, communicating with your community, practicing positive communication skills with other members, and having more spaces where you can just go and generally socialize, have fun. Don't have to feel like when I'm in Florida and you sit in your box watching the TV and the neighbors don't even talk to each other anymore. Right. It's horrible. That's zero social capital. That's the capitalist, corporate capitalist model that has been created there, where everybody is so focused on their own finances and their own personal lives that there is no more social capital left. Okay, so we need to go from that corporate capitalist model into a more social capitalist model, creating more social spaces, spending more time, effort, and energy on the social dynamics of the community in general. And humanity, all of humanity, needs to shift in this direction at this point in time.
Okay, correctly, yeah.
The traditional cultures did exactly that when they with the rest of their time. They took care of their families, they sang and they danced and they did arts and crafts and gave each other abundance and shared whatever they had. And that's, we've all lost this ability to be with each other in joy as the primary nourishment of our lives.
Okay.
I think a practical application where it has to do with finances and sustainability is thinking cradle to cradle, not cradle to grave. When you design a product, you have to think about how it is that it has to be taken apart and not recycled. Recycle is a bad idea. You know, upcycling, fine. Deconstructing, fine. Cradle to cradle. And here, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but a lot of people go back to the States in this ripple effect. Talking to people that are actually manufacturing goods abroad. Where do they get it? How do they source it? Where does it go when it's end of life? So,
exactly, yeah. Design obsoleteness, kind of. Okay, I was going to mention that in Costa Rica we have a good example. One generation ago, actually a little bit more, about 30, 35 years ago, Costa Rica was basically 80% an agrarian society. And their economics were agrarian. That means the absence of money, the absence of currency. 80% of the country lived with very little money, if any at all. Nothing expected on return. No barter, no trade. Okay, that is fundamental in early Costa Rican life, which lasted until about 35 years, 40 years ago. In rural Costa Rica, only the big cities is where the money was being used. The other thing is that Costa Rica has, it's a model for Latin America, has suffered some setbacks in the last few years, but still a model for Latin America is on cooperative systems. One of the most famous, or one of the primary model is the one here in San Isidro. Yeah, that's used as a model for Latin America on cooperative, where the social wealth, the benefits of the cooperative are reinverted back into the society in many forms.
Which one?
The Copeagri, right? Also, there's two terms in Costa Rica which is still, especially in rural Costa Rica, is still being used. One is today for you, tomorrow for me. Hoy por vos, mañana por mí. So it's a way of sharing I do something for you, well, you know that one day I might need something from you. That's part of an economic system. And the other one is las juntas, which basically that's how Costa Rica was built, where you get the neighbor, the community, to build a school, to build the bridge, to build the road, to build. And it's basically done through throwing a party. It's called turnos. So you throw a party, people donate food and their time, and then they charge for that. And during the party, which is a football game, or several football games, horse racing, activities, and a dance at night. Sometimes it includes the community going out on a cavalcade through the countryside, cabalgatas. And the gatherings of those monies, they go to the community, and the government meets that equal amount. Okay? So that's as a point of reference on economics. So we have a very wide spectrum of possibilities. I think I am one that doesn't play ball with a decadent system. I don't play ball with it. I practically are completely out of the system. I haven't been in the system for many years. So basically I follow an old I Ching principle that goes, make firm steps on the path of good. So you don't give that much attention, minimize the attention to the things that don't work. It's wasted energy. You know they don't work, so you don't even need to talk about it. So we evolve on the things that do work, and that we all agree that they're going to that direction.
I just want to throw something in that the way that I see sustainability to me equals freedom. And that goes along with, this family finding that once they got electricity, all these more expenses, were to be met and so forth. To me, sustainability ultimately means to be able to detach from having to pay out, to utility companies and this and that and the other, with taxes and services outside. It means to be totally self-sustainable, self-sufficient. Everything, all your needs met by your own effort, by your own energy, cooperatively working together.
Okay, it's a very good point, and that's one of the most critical points that I have on sustainability. Sustainability and self-sufficiency are not compatible. To the point that takes us to the next step, but I'd like to leave that a little farther down the line. And I'll bring it up a little bit of the point now is they're fundamental, the economics and the cultural aspects of sustainability. The more self-sufficient you are, the less economically contributing you are to the community.
Well, the community becomes self-sufficient.
Where community and sustainable concept is, we're talking about the bioregion. So it's fundamental that we're not self-sustaining. It's fundamental. Okay, it's hard to see that. A lot of people argue that point.
Yeah, I want to be clear on that.
So I'm saying if a family is sustainable, they're not contributing to the community. So we want to think about sustainability in a grander scheme where we're interacting with and contributing to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So self-sustainability is not part of the vision of.
But once you're self-sustained, there's always an abundance created. From there, that's where you can share with the wider.
Okay, let me use ourselves as an example. We started being self-sustainable, self-sufficient. We had everything. We had chickens, we had goats, we even made our clothes from and blankets and so forth from our own weaving, from our own goats. We had the whole 9 yards, name it. We had turkeys, ducks, horses, my God. And we were pretty much, self-sufficient. And now we're not. Now I depend on my neighbors to provide the eggs, the chickens, and it's created, that concept is created a lot more interlinking, not only economically, but culturally. Because economics is very closely associated with culture. We can't practically have one without the other.
I think about that in my farm. Like, had I just started buying milk from the neighbors instead of trying to start it myself, we would have saved a lot of money, a lot of heartache, a lot of stress, and we would have had a really beautiful relationship. We do now, but had that been the priority instead of trying to be self-reliant as a group, like a family. We would have just, made the directory that we're creating now in our village and figured out who's got what and then supported that. We would have been a lot further ahead.
Right, yeah. Good, so we all learn through our own process. I'm not even going to call it mistakes, but through our own process.
I like that.
Yeah, I found in particularly communities in the United States that there's also a very basic economic reason why you have to do that, which is that many of the things like power generation and so forth are much more efficient on a larger scale. A lot of them don't really scale down to the single family very well. A lot of the windmills and other kinds of things work much better and are much more efficient if you have 50, 100, 200 families.
I don't quite understand what you're saying.
Oh,
Electric-wise, like if you have electricity infrastructure, then it's easier, it's more efficient.
Oh, yeah.
Your own energy.
Right, okay, yeah, that's another big concept in economics, sustainable economics. The sacred word sustainable economics is minimize. Now, remember, this new concept of economics is not a consumer-oriented economy. Okay, well, first we should understand that we're moving from an industrialized standard of living concept to a quality of life, post-industrial quality of life system. So the concept of energy is fundamental because that's one of the things that has us locked into an unsustainable paradigm. Okay, so energy is a very important thing. Now that is a whole field in itself. How we can do very well, efficiently produce our own energies. We do, and there are several alternatives to produce more energy than we need without even using solar. Solar is like the big thing now, but in the long run, solar is not really sustainable because it depends on a whole assembly line that is expensive. What do you call it? Right, it demands a lot to produce it. So there's other forms that we can produce our own energy. But the most important thing is to minimize the needs. Now that's an important thing. Now what's happening with the economic concept is that we're locked into a comfort zone. And it's difficult to step out of the comfort zone, mainly because it's become our security. Now, the concept of denial is a very important concept to take into consideration. It's happening, everybody denies it. Why do we deny? It's because that's our security. It's nature's way of protecting us from changes that could challenge our comfort zone. Right? So that's a reality. Now, of course, we have to break away from that comfort zone to be able to. But that doesn't mean that's also a phrase that I don't quite see agreeably, because comfort has many aspects. So we can change from one comfort zone to another comfort zone without going through the trauma of doing without. Am I understanding me? So it's a state of the mind, a mental state. To understand this, and this is a really important part of economics as far as the sustainable economics is concerned, is to minimize dependencies. Right? As we step away from the consumer society, one of the things is we have to change from one kind of comfort to another, and part of that process is minimize these dependencies we have created on this old paradigm and create or establish a new one that makes us feel comfort. We do not have to suffer the change. There's no real need to go through that suffering if we can see that there's an alternative. So in order to minimize the denial concept, which is basically a fundamental ailment, psychological ailment, in psychology is called misfortunes. By definition, unjustified fears of the unknown. We all suffer to a degree, right? Misfortunes. So how do we break away from that? And it is the basis of actually our psychosomatic conditioning and how we get sick. It's because fears.
unjustified fears. So the more we confront, whenever you find yourself in a fearful situation, don't try to cover up, don't try to evade it, confront it. If it can be dealt with, good. If it cannot be dealt with, good. It doesn't matter. What matters is you confront it. You take the time to focus on it. Now, how is that part of the economics? The more fears we have, the less ability we are able to share wealth, because we tend to gather, to become ecocentric. Now, an important thing in the economics of sustainability is to start thinking ecocentric and get away from anthropocentric concept of our culture. So, right, so we have to see nature as our wealth. Okay? Then once we see that the bioregion, it has so many trees, it has so much watershed, it has so much biodiversity, and we put a value to that instead of gold or digital or dollars or whatever, then we'll start establishing an economic sustainable system. And unavoidably, that's what's going to happen, because there's no other alternative. We can't go back to any of those doing two jobs in one, because we protect what we value.
Okay, the term intrinsic value is coming to mind right now. Certain things have an intrinsic value that you can't necessarily put a monetary value on. For example, this tree right behind us right now is performing functions that allow us to breathe oxygen. Okay, what's the monetary value of that? It's hard to say. Western culture tends to look at everything with a price tag. And what we're not seeming to understand is that the intrinsic value of that tree creating oxygen is more valuable than any monies it could possibly be worth. And this is an important concept to understand thoroughly when you're talking about bioregions and ecosystems, because if you cut down all the trees for money, there's nothing making oxygen for you anymore. A lot of farmers have experienced with these monoculture farms, they take out the whole ecosystem to plant one crop, and next thing you know, the soil is no good. These trees are, dropping leaves, they're creating more soil. There's a whole system, an ecosystem, that does not have a monetary value. Everything has a price tag to begin with. And understand that intrinsic value is far more important than monetary value, basically.
Correct. Okay, good. Very good point, because basically that's where we're heading to that shift. Now, we have models that have worked through millennia. In the Americas, I actually recommend this book. It's called 1491 by Charles Mann. Okay? It's a perspective on how America, the continent, was before the coming of the Europeans. And their economy is very interesting. How their economy was had to do with basically nature. They had, especially in Brazil, in Central America, their main farming techniques were vertical. They planted trees not to create a forest, but to create growing areas of food. So they grow food vertically. Sort of like food forests, right? But in huge trees that you have to climb up and start collecting not only fruits and vegetables, but also insects and birds and eggs and whatever. And that is actually, according to Charles Mann, the jungles of Brazil are man-made. Right. And in Costa Rica, the University of Ottawa, the University of, back in the 70s, they had a program in Talamanca, in the Costa Rican Caribbean side, on how to develop vertical farming in the jungle. I don't know what happened to the program, it's no longer there, but I was very interested, that's how I got turned on to it. And actually in my farm we use that concept as much as possible. Not that we need to,
but sort of to implement it as a didactical presentation for the school that we are doing. Right. So it's taking tree, food forest a step beyond. Okay. Anybody else want to make a comment on economics?
I just wanted to mention that I've been doing a woman at the farm right now from East Berlin, and when she was growing up, she lived in communist Germany, and she said that she felt like it would work really well, but the problem was that people were forced into it. So, but like as far as the logistics of how like the system worked, everything was taken care of, and it's been really fun to just like probe her experience and be like, okay, so you know, there was only like one kind of thing that was provided for, and everyone it was all people, you know, communism. But it was interesting because I sat there and asked her, like, do you think this system could thrive? And she said yes, had it not been pushed in, because the way that communist regime happened was that, you know, it was like,
Military coup.
yeah, it was oppressive, and it disconnected people from their families and West Germany. And so, but she said that had that not been the case, and if people had accepted that she felt it was a phenomenal system.
Right. That's the benefits of, for example, a cooperative system that combines socialism and capitalism into one concept.
Yeah, and one thing that she said that stopped, the thing that was most hard for her was the advertisements. And like how she lost her identity and got very depressed in when they opened up.
Right. Right. A very important thing to take into consideration is that we are subjected to a behavioral pattern of social, development. Right? We are caught in that. It's very difficult. My specialty in anthropology has been semiotics, which is precisely the science that is used to manage science and civics for marketing, for political reasons. So it's a form of psychological management. And we're subjected to it, like it or not. And it's very subliminal. It's just like you hardly realize that you're being induced into a behavioral pattern. Okay, it's important to be able to put that into perspective. At least you know where it's coming from.
Within this circle, people of a specific point of view, how do you go back to developed countries like the States or Europe that live in market economies, capitalistic-driven economies, and spread that message? So I know there's a movement in the States now, anyway, to recognize the intrinsic value that you talked about, Dylan, and then monetize it and say, okay, if you've got a tree with such, breast height diameter and such spread, it's going to be worth this to you as a property owner to retain that tree. Try to work within that market-driven system to preserve those qualities.
Conservation has a lot to do.
Because I don't think just beating the drum is going to do it. Because precisely for the mention, or what you mentioned about being everybody and participating in those economies have been socialized to value them and internalize that.
Okay. We must all realize how it should be. That reality is that things don't move according to how we want. Right. So I think I'm not an idealist. I'm a pragmatician. I don't believe in intentionality. I have no intentions. I just do or don't do. And if I fail in doing it, I take it as a lesson. But I don't have any intention of doing. I do. Period. If you make a mistake, that's okay. If it comes out good, that's okay. All right? So that's a very important thing, because if I was an intentional person, I always can't relay back and I tried. I'm trying. I tried. Now I don't try. I do. So the process itself is the doing, no intention to it.
And that's, my fault. That's permaculture too, right? The seed drops. It does. And I've even, just as an experimental thing, just doing it, how I've been developing my small farm, which has been the biggest blessing to me, as I get really excited to go to bed early, get up early, put a shovel in my hand and ask God, what am I going to do today? And He puts it right there, and I've developed the whole farm that way, and I would never do it another way, ever, after doing this. So I think just having the idea of just do in your head puts you in that seed position to really grow.
Right, right, very important. There's a lot of power in that one.
I do think though that when it comes to the individual, that's true. However, when it because we've been doing that at the farm, and a lot of people just doing a lot of disorganized things creates a lot of chaos. So there is an imbalance in that where you do, but you do in a way like it's like the measure 3 times cut once in carpentry or in permaculture design. Once you got the design down, it doesn't matter if it's written up. But if you've got a design so that everyone's working on their thing, they're doing it. But it makes it so much easier and there's a lot less waste. Because when people are doing their own thing, like when I first started the farm, and there were like all these volunteers, it was like, oh, I got this idea, can I go do it? And they're like, yeah, go do it. And then there's no one to maintain it when that person leaves. And you don't know what they were thinking. And so there's like, when it comes to social permaculture or social organization, it's important to have one vision that everyone can say, okay, that's the vision, let's stick to that. Here's a plan of how we enact it.
And I think that what you're pointing out is God's vision is what they need to all have.
There's something missing there. You know what's missing there? Leadership.
Yes.
Leadership. I know we all want to be very free, and if we come from a society that somehow we feel that our individuality is being taken over by, an abstract concept, right? So leadership is very important, and it's not a matter of envision anything, although that's part of it too. I'm not negating it, that it's importance and everything, but it's a matter of leadership and organization. One of the things that I noticed in these intentional communities that I've been checking out in the last few years is so much disorganization, so much disorder, so many tools left all around. And you know why that's happening? Because there's no leadership. There's not somebody taking responsibility at all levels.
I disagree.
Okay.
And the disagreement is based on the work done in your homeland during the period of anarchism there.
Mm-hmm.
That was
1930s.
That was a complete form of joyful governance that was more efficient than the authority that preceded it.
Right, right.
What I'm objecting to is the invocation of the need for authority.
I'm not saying authority. I don't confuse the terms.
You didn't say that, but
it's not authority.
I got the feeling, the sense that it was someone to provide direction.
Not necessarily. Okay, let's go to this.
I don't believe that's needed.
No, I don't either.
It's
I don't either.
agreements.
I think leadership has nothing to do with authority. Leadership is a matter of taking initiative and responsibility. Right? When you do the right thing as a person with initiative, everybody understands it and will go. That is leadership. So it's not authority.
And
It's not
having
confuse the
also,
issues.
one thing that we've learned through this process is having really clear agreements. Getting to that, because if you act without that, it ends up being really chaotic.
The most important thing in this perspective is time. We cannot implement anything without going through the due process that it takes to go through it. So we pay the price. Nothing is free. We have to pay the price. So it's cool. I mean, it's actually fun. One of the things I enjoy the most about doing anything is the doing it, not the outcome. When it's done, finished, and move on to the next. Is that more or less what that? Okay, yes.
Yeah, there's a time relationship to this disagreement between leadership and authority, and which is that you need to have someone to some degree in a position of authority. If you just rely on people voluntarily coming forward and taking leadership, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Often, eventually, it's going to fall apart for sure. So it really will. And maybe you don't understand the own role that you've played in communities, but the fact is, you can have people being in positions where they are leaders, but it's a time thing. You're in a position of leadership for a year or for 6 months, and during that period you have a certain area of responsibility that you direct, And then people can come together at a certain period of time, and they can evaluate it, they can measure it, they can see how it went, they can evaluate whether or not you were successful. And then there's this concept of other concepts like tactics and strategy, whereas
A lot of this comes out naturally through the process itself. Okay? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say this is always a huge issue in community because some people are born natural leaders, and then there's some people who just can't stand taking orders from anybody ever. So where do you find the balance in that? Well, that's where the consensus process comes in, basically. The consensus and council circle is just, I can't stress enough how important it is for a community to have a functioning, very well functioning, well-oiled, well-kept council consensus process.
Right.
All the time, every day, at least once a day.
The way we work in the school, how we design it, we have 3 leadership groups. We have the Council of Elders, the Council of Local Leaders from the different villages, and the Council of Youth. The 3 of them act independently. When there is a decision to be made that it's important, they come together with the director of the school, which is the one that implements the decisions at the levels of leadership. Right? Yes. Sorry. Excuse me a moment. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
There's kind of this blurring of political philosophies between anarchy and authoritarian government. When we talk about leadership or representative democracy or something like that, it's putting authority in some chosen people. So I think the difference is it voluntary or is it enforced through force? And
good point.
If it's very voluntary and peaceful, then the community may choose to use force on an individual level defensively, but no one's going to stand for any gross injustices from a police state.
Nope.
They could arrest
Doesn't work. Okay, basically, if you don't want something to be done, you enforce it. In other words, if I was the devil, I would create a Catholic Church, or any of the churches, and for that matter, where you force people to be good. Yeah. So the concept of freedom is an ideal. There's not such a thing as freedom. It's sort of like the Buddha state. We're all interdependent on everything. We are not free from the air. We're not free from food. We're not free from being gregarious. So we're not free. There's not such a thing as freedom. So let me just finish to put freedom into perspective. Freedom is nothing but a way to say responsibility. Okay? So when you take responsibility on your actions, you're free to do anything you want to, but you're not free of the consequences you're doing, of what you're doing. So there's no such a thing as freedom.
There's freedom and there's consequences.
Right. I was going to say part of the origin of economics for me is personal responsibility. Being responsible for my state of mind so that I never have to accuse other people of being responsible for my state of mind or responsible for my well-being. And once I have personal responsibility for my state of mind, I can take responsibility for deciding what to do about that. But if I'm not able to be responsible for my state of mind, I don't know where it just leads to where we are now in the States.
It's called maturity.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we were children,
was the person who was essentially the most kind and generous, and the person who was going to be looking out for the good of the whole.
Exactly.
And that was their strength. And so for them, these concepts of being selfish was that just didn't make any sense in the tribal community. That was what? How could the leader be selfish? That doesn't work. So having that perspective of leadership is very important because it's saying this is the person who's really, really good.
which brings us to basic economics. Basic economics is the circle gift concept. So you're just sharing, depending on what you need, somebody will see that you need, and you'll be shared. Yes.
You kind of touched on it a little bit. I think personally that effective leadership comes from clarification and empowerment. I very much perceive an effective leader as someone who is holding up the collective skills and resources that are around them, not someone who allocates them or decides what people should do. What people should do is a collective decision amongst all of us for what we want to do and what we wish for others.
Or maybe just the person who does it. Like in the Avatar movie, the person who does it, that's the leader. He took care of business.
Right, initiative.
That's real leadership.
Is in the common good. Our focus on that, on the school. The school, the object is not to teach sustainability. It's not to teach farming, it's not to teach crafts, it's not to teach dancing, no. It's empowerment of the individual with the main purpose that that individual is going to go back to their original communities and they're going to be a role model to their peers. Right? That's the number one concept of the school. The second is that the school itself, being a village where the students and the teachers and the support system works and lives, and the village itself becomes a regional model of a sustainable practice. This is important to put that into perspective. Sustainable practices is not sustainability. So it's what are the things, our craftsmanship, you know, as a farmer, as an animal husbandry, as a carpenter, that, you know, is an empowering. Having to have. There's a gypsy saying, I was raised with gypsies, and this was, you know, as a child, is I don't mind doing whatever I have to do. What I mind is having to have to do it.
It's like a kid's like that too. Like we say, hey, can you drink your water today? Oh, no, I don't want to drink water. And then like, if you don't make a deal about it, they drink water all day long. But as soon as they're like,
Good, good. Okay, how are we moving along? Everything good? All right, so then I can move on to the next stage, which is cultural sustainability.